Captain Sam Wright had been flying cargo ships for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what was happening at the trade stations. His ship, the Aurora's Dream, was one of the few human vessels allowed in neutral space for essential trade. What he saw during his runs would have seemed impossible just months before. At Nexus Station, the biggest trading hub in the galaxy, Sam watched Vakari and Threx merchants screaming at each other over docking fees. The fees had been the same for 200 years, but now everything was an argument. "You lizard thieves charge too much," shouted a Threx captain with forearms waving in anger. "These fees are robbery." The Vakari dockmaster's crest flared. "Bright red? Pay the standard rate or find another station, Blueskin," he growled back. "Your people think they own the galaxy because they have money." Sam had never heard aliens talk to each other like this. During the war, they had been polite and professional with each other, even when they disagreed. Now they acted like children, fighting over toys. In the station's market area, Zolani research teams refused to share data with Orlani observers. The tall, pale Orlani diplomats stood around looking confused as the machine-like Zolani packed up their equipment. "Our temporary war alliance has ended," announced the lead Zolani researcher, its optical sensors flashing in patterns that Sam had learned meant annoyance. "We have no obligation to share our discoveries with inferior species." The Orlani diplomats' long necks stretched even taller. "The Galactic Research Accord requires all discoveries to be shared through proper diplomatic channels," it said in its whispered voice. "The accord was signed by the old government," the Zolani replied. "Our current Council recognizes no such agreements." Sam recorded everything he saw and sent reports back to Intelligence Officer Kelly Harper on Earth. Kelly was one of the smartest people Sam had ever met, and she was having trouble believing his reports. "The whole coalition is falling apart," Sam told her over the secure communication channel. "They spend so much time watching us for signs of attack that they stop talking to each other." Kelly's image on the screen shook her head in amazement. "Our analysts predicted some tension, but not complete breakdown. What exactly are you seeing out there?" "Yesterday I watched a Threx trade convoy get inspected by Vakari patrol ships for 6 hours, Sam reported. "The Threx were carrying medical supplies to a neutral world, but the Vakari treated them like smugglers. Then this morning, Zolani research vessels refused to help rescue survivors from a Orlani ship that had engine trouble. They said it was not their responsibility." The changes went deeper than just rudeness and arguments. The 4 species had been sharing military technology, trade routes, and research data for 3 years during the war. Now that cooperation was ending fast on Earth. President Robert Chun met with his advisors in the secure conference room beneath the Global Defense Building. The walls were lined with screens showing data from across the galaxy. Every screen told the same story. The coalition was destroying itself. "Sir," Defense Secretary Nancy Price pointed to a chart showing military movements. "Coalition military spending has gone beyond anything we have ever seen. They have more warships now than they had during our war, but they are pointing them at each other." Dr. Alex Morgan, Earth's expert on alien politics, had predicted this might happen, but he was surprised by how fast it was occurring. "The coalition was always artificial," he explained to the president. 4 species with completely different goals, held together only by fear of human expansion. Remove that fear, and they have no reason to stay together. "But why are they building so many weapons?" asked General Pete Harrison, head of Earth Defense Forces. "Because they are afraid," Dr. Morgan replied. "They spent 3 years convinced that humans were the greatest threat in the galaxy. Now humans are not threatening anyone, so they have to find new threats. And the closest threats are their former allies." The breakdown was happening in ways that seemed almost comical if they were not so dangerous. The Vakari had always been proud warriors who valued strength and honor. They could not understand why the Threx cared more about money than fighting ability. During the war, this difference had not mattered because they were fighting humans together. Now it seemed like a major problem. The Threx had always thought the Vakari were primitive brutes who solved everything with violence. They had worked with them during the war because Vakari ships were good at destroying human colonies. Now they wondered why they needed these dangerous allies. The Zilani believed they were the smartest species in the galaxy. They had shared their advanced technology during the war because they needed the others' help to fight humans. Now they questioned why they should help species they saw as inferior. The Olani were master diplomats who had kept galactic peace for thousands of years. They had joined the coalition to maintain their influence. But if the coalition was falling apart, maybe it was time to pick sides and play the others against each other. Lieutenant Commander Ben Fisher worked at the human listening post at Gamma Relay, monitoring alien communications. His job used to be tracking threats to human space. Now he spent most of his time translating arguments between former allies. War Prime Zenthak is demanding that all Zilani research vessels leave Vakari space, he reported to his commanding officer. The Zilani High Council is calling this an act of aggression against scientific freedom. The Threks are upset because it will disrupt their trade routes. The Orlani are claiming the whole thing violates 17 different treaties. His commander, Captain Joyce Miller, looked at the communication transcripts with growing concern. These are not diplomatic protests anymore. These sound like threats, she was right. The language in the alien communications was getting harsher every day. Terms like unacceptable behavior and violation of sovereignty were being used more often. Military units were being moved for defensive purposes, but positioned in ways that looked aggressive. On the human frontier world of New Detroit, Governor Mike Sullivan watched the news feeds with alarm. New Detroit was only 12 light years from the nearest alien system. If a war started between the coalition species, his world would be right in the middle of it. They are moving entire fleets around, he reported to Earth in his daily briefing. Vakari battle groups are heading towards Zilani space. The Threks have activated their merchant marine as military auxiliaries. It looks like they have forgotten. We exist. That was exactly the problem, and exactly what made it so dangerous. The coalition species had built huge military forces to fight humans. The ships were designed with human tactics in mind. The weapons were tested against human defenses. The training was all about defeating human strategies. Now, with humans posing no threat at all, they had these massive military capabilities and no clear purpose for them. Old grudges that had been put aside during the war were coming back. Territorial disputes that had been frozen were heating up again. Trade disagreements that had been resolved through compromise were becoming reasons for military action. Captain Susan Davis commanded the intelligence ship Nightingale, which operated in deep space between the major alien territories. Her job was to watch for threats to human interests. What she found was more troubling than any direct threat. They are preparing for war, she reported in her encrypted transmission to Earth. Not against us, against each other. The ships they built to fight humans are now pointed at their former allies. The irony was not lost on human observers. The coalition had militarized far beyond their normal levels to counter the human threat. They had built weapons, trained soldiers, and developed strategies all focused on defeating humanity. Now, with humans wanting nothing more than to be left alone, they had all this military power and ancient grievances to settle with it. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, still observing from her research ship, documented the changes with scientific precision. The coalition species are displaying classic symptoms of alliance breakdown, she recorded. Without external pressure to maintain unity, internal conflicts are escalating rapidly. Military buildup intended for one purpose is being redirected toward former allies. The most dangerous part was how fast it was happening. Alliance breakdown usually took years or decades. The Terran coalition relationship was dissolving in months. Every day brought new incidents, new accusations, new reasons for suspicion. The speed of collapse suggests the alliance was never as stable as it appeared, Dr. Rodriguez noted. The fear of human expansion was the only thing holding it together. Remove that fear, and the artificial nature of their cooperation becomes obvious. From Earth, the view was both fascinating and terrifying. Humanity had achieved its goal of being left alone, but the method was creating a galaxy-wide crisis. The aliens were so focused on the human threat that never came. They had stopped maintaining the relationships that kept their own civilization stable. President Chun summed it up in his private diary. We asked for nothing, and in getting nothing, we may have given the galaxy more chaos than any war could have created. 3 months after the peace talks, the galaxy watched in confusion as humans simply went home. Every ship that had been fighting in alien space turned around and headed back to human territory. There were no secret missions, no hidden fleets, no spy networks left behind. The humans just left. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the research ship Meridian, watching the data streams from across the galaxy. She was one of the few humans allowed in neutral space to study alien behavior. What she saw made no sense according to everything they knew about galactic politics. They are going crazy, she said into her recording device. The aliens cannot understand what we are doing because we are not doing anything. On the Vakari homeworld, War Prime Zenthak paced back and forth in his war room. The floor was covered with scratches from his claws. His advisors stood around the edges of the room, afraid to get too close when he was this angry. The humans are planning something, he said for the 100th time that day. No species accepts defeat without seeking revenge. They gather their strength for a bigger attack. Subcommander Kithel stepped forward carefully. Our spy satellites show no military buildup in human space, she reported. Their shipyards are building cargo ships and passenger vessels. Their colonies are growing food and doing research? Impossible. Zenthak slammed his fist on the metal table, leaving deep dents. Show me the real reports. Where are they hiding their war fleet? But there were no hidden fleets. The humans really were doing exactly what they said they would do. They were going back to their normal lives. The same confusion spread through all 4 alien governments. The Threx trade ministers met every day to discuss human economic activity. They expected humans to try to hurt their business or steal their customers. Instead, humans seemed happy to trade only within their own space. It makes no sense, said Trade Minister Vexal at the daily meeting. They should be trying to undercut our prices or steal our trade routes. Instead, they are buying our products and paying full price. His assistant, a younger Threx named Killan, looked at the reports with confusion. Maybe they really do not want to fight us anymore? The older ministers laughed at this idea. No species ever gives up the desire for profit and power, Vexal said. They are planning something clever. The Zilani were just as confused. Their research stations listened to human communications day and night, looking for secret military codes. Instead, they found humans talking about art, music, and scientific discoveries. Human scientists were sharing their research with anyone who wanted to read it. Even their former enemies. Chief Researcher Kintel studied the intercepted messages with growing bewilderment. Their communications contained no military secrets. It reported to the High Council. They discuss philosophy, literature, and mathematics. Some of them write poetry. Poetry must be code, insisted Council Leader Vinik. No species writes poetry when planning for war. But when the Zilani's best codebreakers analyzed the human poetry, they found it really was just poetry. Humans wrote about love, loss, hope, and the beauty of stars. There were no hidden meanings or secret plans. The Orlani had the best spy network in the galaxy. Their agents could infiltrate any society and learn its secrets, but there were no secrets to learn from humans. The Orlani spies reported the same thing over and over. Humans were living normal lives. They worked their jobs, raised their children, and build new cities, reported Agent Solana from the human frontier. They have art festivals and sports competitions. They argue about politics and fall in love. It is the most boring spy assignment in galactic history. Commander Tony Blake ran the monitoring station at Eco 7 on the edge of human space. His job was to watch for alien threats. Instead, he found himself watching the aliens watch each other. This is weird, he said to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Karen Wells. The alien fleets are not watching us anymore. They are watching each other. Karen looked at the sensor displays. Vakari ships were following Threx trade vessels. Zilani research ships were spying on Orlani diplomatic missions. The four species that had worked together to fight humans were now treating each other like enemies. Why are they doing that? Karen asked. Tony thought about it. Maybe because they have nothing else to do. They built all these ships to fight US, and we are not fighting back. So now they are suspicious of everyone. He was more right than he knew. The four alien species had joined together only because they all feared human expansion. Now that humans were not expanding, they had no reason to work together. Old arguments and rivalries that had been put aside during the war began to surface again. On the Threx homeworld, merchant captains complained about Vakari patrol ships stopping their cargo vessels for random inspections. The inspections were not random. The Vakari were looking for weapons or anything else that might threaten them. Why should we accept these searches? Demanded Captain Rexim at a trade guild meeting. The war is over. We are supposed to be allies. But were they still allies? The Threx had joined the coalition to protect their trade routes from human pirates. There were no more human pirates. The Vakari had joined to prevent human military expansion. There was no more human expansion. The Zilani had joined to stop humans from stealing their technology. Humans were not trying to steal anything. The Orlani had joined because they feared losing their role as galactic diplomats if humans created their own alliance system. But humans were not trying to make alliances with anyone without a common enemy. The four species began to remember why they had not liked each other in the first place. Dr. Rodriguez documented all of this from her research ship. She had studied galactic politics for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The coalition was held together by fear, she recorded. Take away the thing they fear, and they have no reason to cooperate. In fact, they are starting to compete with each other for the resources they used to share. The Vakari had always thought the Threx were greedy and dishonest. During the war, they had put aside these feelings to fight humans. Now, with no humans to fight, the old feelings came back stronger than ever, the Zilani had always believed. They were smarter than the other species. They had shared their technology during the war because they needed allies. Now they wondered why they should help species they considered inferior. The Threx had always resented paying for other species' military adventures. They had funded the war because human pirates were hurting their business. With no more pirates, why should they keep paying for Vakari ships and Orlani diplomats? The Orlani had always wanted to control galactic politics through careful manipulation. They had worked with the others because the coalition gave them power. But if the coalition was falling apart, maybe it was time to choose sides and play the others against each other. From Earth, President Robert Chun watched the reports with a mixture of amusement and worry. The Global Defense Council had been skeptical of the do-nothing strategy. Many people thought it was just giving up, but it seemed to be working better than anyone had expected. Sir, Defense Secretary Nancy Price came into his office with the latest intelligence briefing. Coalition military spending has increased by 400% since the peace treaty. They are building warships faster than they did during the actual war. To fight who? Chun asked, though he already suspected the answer. Each other, Nancy replied. Vakari patrol groups have had 3 confrontations with Threx security forces in the last month. The Zilani have stopped sharing research data with anyone. The Orlani are claiming ancient rights to star systems that other species have been using for centuries. Chun nodded slowly. So, asking for nothing is giving us everything we actually wanted. It looks that way, sir. They are too busy watching each other to bother with us. Outside the president's window, children played in a park while their parents watched and smiled. Construction crews worked on new buildings. Scientists at the university made discoveries that they shared freely with the world. It was exactly the kind of life humans had always wanted to live. The galaxy was learning that. The most dangerous thing about humans was not their weapons or their ambition. It was their ability to be satisfied with what they had. The Second Galactic War began exactly 73 days after the Theta incident. It started when a Vakari battle fleet attacked a Zelani research station in the Orion Arm, killing 12,000 civilians. The Zelani response was swift and brutal. Quantum torpedoes that turned a Vakari military base into radioactive dust. Within a week, the conflict had spread to 4 different fronts. The Threx declared their neutrality and hired mercenary fleets to protect their trade routes. The Olani tried to mediate, then chose sides when mediation failed. Soon, every species was fighting every other species, using weapons and ships designed to fight humans. From his farm on New Montana, RED Admiral Jake Patterson watched the news feeds with a mixture of sadness and grim satisfaction. The peaceful hills around his home seemed like another universe compared to the images of burning planets and destroyed fleets that filled the galactic news networks. "We never wanted to conquer anyone," he told war correspondent Rachel Stone during what would be his last interview. "We just wanted to be left alone to live our lives. When we asked for nothing at that peace table, we were not being weak. We were being honest." Rachel looked out over the fields where Jake's grandson played with other children from the nearby town. "Do you think the galaxy understands that now?" Jake watched his grandson chase a ball while his friends laughed and cheered. "I think the galaxy is learning that getting what you want and keeping what you have are 2 different things." The numbers from the Second Galactic War were staggering in their brutality. In the first year alone, over 200 billion beings died. Entire planets were rendered uninhabitable. Star systems that had been connected by trade and diplomacy for thousands of years became isolated battlegrounds. The Vakari, bred for war, proved terrifyingly effective with their advanced weapons. But their honor-based culture made them vulnerable to the Zelani's cold, calculated tactics. The Zelani's superior technology gave them early victories, but they lacked the population to replace their losses. The Threx discovered that money could not buy loyalty when survival was at stake. Their hired fleets abandoned them the moment the fighting became too dangerous. The Orlani's diplomatic skills meant nothing when no one was interested in talking. Dr. Elena Rodriguez published her analysis 5 years after the coalition's collapse. Her book, The Paradox of Peace, How Asking for Nothing Won Everything, became required reading at every university in human space. "The coalition species made a fundamental error," she wrote. "They assumed we thought like they did, that expansion and domination were goals worth any price. They could not understand a species that would choose satisfaction over conquest." Human space, meanwhile, prospered in ways that seemed impossible during the war years. Without the constant threat of alien attack, Earth's colonies expanded peacefully. Their scientists made breakthrough discoveries that they shared freely with anyone who wanted them. Their artists created works that celebrated life instead of glorifying death. The contrast was visible from orbit. Human worlds glowed with the lights of growing cities, thriving farms, and bustling spaceports. The former coalition worlds flickered with the fires of ongoing battles, the lights of civilization dimmed by constant warfare. Captain Lisa Brooks, now Secretary of Humanitarian Affairs, established the Haven Protocols when refugee ships began appearing at human borders. Any being seeking safety from the Galactic War would be granted sanctuary, no questions asked. "We have more than enough room," she announced at the Global Assembly. "Earth has always been a planet where different species could coexist. Now we can prove that on a galactic scale." The first refugee ship arrived at Kepler Station 6 months after the war began. Commander Tony Blake, who now ran the integration facilities, met the survivors with supplies and medical care. Most were Threx civilians whose homeworld had been destroyed in a Vakari attack. "They expected us to demand payment or service in exchange for help," Blake reported to Earth. "When we gave them food, shelter, and safety without asking for anything in return, many of them cried. Some asked if it was a trick. It was not a trick." Humanity had learned something that the galaxy was still struggling to understand. True. Strength came from being secure enough to help others without expecting anything back. The refugee population grew steadily as the war expanded. Zelani scientists whose research stations were destroyed Vakari warriors who refused to kill civilians, Orlani diplomats whose governments had collapsed, all found homes in human space. Dr. James Kim, who directed the New Geneva Integration Center, studied the psychological effects of the transition from war to peace. Many refugees arrive expecting conflict, competition, and suspicion, he recorded. Human society confuses them because we have solved most of the problems that their species still fight over. The integration was not always smooth. Vakari refugees struggled with human concepts of equality and cooperation. Zilani refugees could not understand why humans shared their technology freely. Threx refugees kept trying to pay for things that humans considered basic rights, but slowly, gradually, the refugees adapted. Vakari children played with human children without caring about species differences. Zilani scientists collaborated with human researchers on projects that benefited everyone. Threx merchants learned that business could be conducted without deception or exploitation. President Robert Chun, serving his second term during the crisis, often visited the refugee centers, the site of former enemies living peacefully in human communities proved that the nothing strategy had been more successful than its creators had dared hope. "We asked for nothing because we already had everything we needed," he said in his farewell address. Peace, freedom, and the chance to decide our own future. The galaxy has learned, perhaps too late, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is want nothing at all. The lesson was being learned in fire and blood across the galaxy. Military academies that still functioned analyzed the human approach with growing understanding. How had a species won a war by genuinely not wanting to win it? The answer was visible in every human settlement, every refugee camp, every collaboration between former enemies. Humanity had achieved victory not through superior weapons or clever tactics, but by creating a society so attractive that others wanted to join it rather than fight it. Ambassador Sarah Wells, Earth's representative to the few remaining neutral worlds, explained it to a gathering of surviving diplomats from across the galaxy. "My species learned something important during our brief time as warriors," she said. "The only war worth winning is the one that ends with everyone safe and happy. Any other victory is just delayed defeat." The phrase human wisdom entered a dozen languages as a term for achieving goals through unexpected restraint. Military historians studied the case for decades, trying to understand how apparent weakness had become overwhelming strength. The memorial built at New Geneva, where the peace talks had taken place, bore an inscription in 20 different languages. Sometimes the greatest victory is achieved by wanting nothing more than to stop fighting. As the galaxy slowly began to rebuild from the ashes of the Second Galactic War, humanity remained true to their word. They asked for nothing, offered help to those who needed it, and demonstrated that the most alien thing in the universe might be a species that meant exactly what it said. The children who played in the fields of New Montana, Earth, and hundreds of other human worlds grew up in a universe where their greatest enemy had been their own success. They learned that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to choose not to die in the end. Humanity's request for nothing had given them everything. A galaxy too exhausted by war to threaten them, respect earned through restraint, and the ultimate prize, the chance to grow and evolve without interference from those who could never understand that some species really did just want to be left alone to build something beautiful, the stars that had once been filled. With the ships of war now carried refugees seeking safety, scientists sharing knowledge, and artists spreading beauty. It was not the galaxy anyone had planned for, but it was the galaxy that humanity's simple honesty had created. And in the quiet moments between the storms, when the fighting died down and the survivors looked up at the stars, they remembered. The humans who had asked for nothing and, in getting nothing, had shown them what everything really meant. Emotional pain also made them capable of extraordinary compassion. As the damaged fleets began to separate, both sides knew Admiral Krextel's report reached the Coalition Council 3 days after the battle at Kepler 442, the crystalline. Leaders' words spread through the galactic communication network like ripples on a pond. Within hours, Every major government had copies of his observations about human behavior during the conflict. Elder Isethka read the report in her private chambers on the Veltani homeworld. The ancient leader had seen 1,000 years of galactic politics, but Krextel's words challenged everything she thought she knew about warfare and civilization. The humans wept, she read aloud to her council. They wept for enemies they had never met. They risked their lives to save those who would have killed them without hesitation. I have never witnessed such behavior in any species. The council chamber buzzed with confused voices. Veltani culture valued honor and courage in battle, but the concept of grieving for one's enemies was foreign to them. Their crystal minds struggled to understand the human paradox. Perhaps this is weakness disguised as strength, suggested Councillor Vextion. They cannot commit fully to warfare because their emotions compromise their judgment. Elder Isethka was not convinced. The battle reports showed that humans fought with devastating effectiveness. Their tactics had been sound, their courage unquestionable. Yet they had chosen to save their enemies when they could have destroyed them. On the Kresh collective world, 10 billion minds shared the translated report simultaneously. The hive consciousness processed the information through countless individual perspectives, trying to understand human behavior through their collective intelligence. The Kresh had always believed that individual sacrifice for the group was the highest form of evolution. But humans took this concept further. They sacrificed for beings who were not even part of their species. The collective mind struggled to comprehend such expansion of loyalty. Perhaps humans operate on a group consciousness larger than their species, theorized the primary node. Perhaps they see all intelligent life as part of their collective. If this was true, it explained human behavior in ways that both fascinated and terrified the Kresh. A species that fought for all life rather than just their own kind could not be defeated by conventional means. The luminal conclave gathered in the energy fields surrounding their star. These beings of pure consciousness had always considered themselves the most evolved species in the galaxy. They existed beyond physical needs, communicating through direct energy transfer, but the human capacity for emotional complexity impressed them. The luminals had transcended grief when they abandoned physical form. Humans experienced deeper emotional pain than any other species, yet continued to function and thrive. They carry suffering as we carry light, observed the eldest luminal. It does not diminish them, it makes them stronger. Captain Morrison stood in the Defiance conference room, looking across the table at Admiral Krextel. The Veltani leader had been given full diplomatic status as they negotiated the terms of a ceasefire. Both men had changed since the battle. Your fleet could have escaped, Krextel said. You could have left us to face the reactor explosion. Alone, why did you choose to help us? Morrison considered his answer carefully. Because leaving you to die would have made us the savages you thought we were. The Admiral's crystalline face reflected the conference room lights as he processed this response. Your species confuses my understanding of warfare. You fight to win, but you also fight to preserve life. How do you resolve this contradiction? We don't, Morrison admitted. We live with it. Every human soldier carries the weight of every life we take. It makes us sad, but it also makes us careful. We only kill when we have no other choice. Krextel transmitted Morrison's words to the coalition fleet. The alien commanders who had expected to face bloodthirsty savages instead found themselves dealing with warriors who treated their enemies with respect and their prisoners with honor. On the coalition worlds, public opinion began to shift. News broadcasts showed footage of human soldiers weeping over alien graves. They showed human medics treating wounded enemies with the same care they gave their own people. The Scare Republic had been preparing for war with humanity, based on coalition intelligence reports. But their military leaders reconsidered their plans as they studied human behavior. An enemy who grieved for their losses might also be an enemy who could be reasoned with. Commander Ben Parker lay in the medical bay of his crippled ship. The valiant, his body was broken, but his spirit remained strong. He had given everything to save the Kresh Hive ship, and he felt no regret about his choice. Sir, the Crush Collective wants to thank you personally, reported his communications officer. Lieutenant Andy Bell. They're offering to share their medical technology to help with your recovery. Parker smiled despite his pain. Tell them I was just doing my job, but I appreciate the gesture. The offer of alien medical technology was significant. The Crush had never shared their advanced healing techniques with other species. Their willingness to help Parker showed how deeply the human actions had affected them. Dr. Walsh worked around the clock to treat casualties from both fleets. Her medical bay had become a symbol of human compassion, where former enemies worked together to save lives. Veltani crystal singers used their abilities to ease pain while human nurses provided comfort to dying aliens. Doctor, we're running low on universal blood plasma, reported Tony Kim. The alien casualties are using up our supplies faster than expected. Walsh checked her inventory. They had enough supplies to treat human casualties easily, but helping the aliens was depleting their resources. She made the decision without hesitation. Transfer plasma from our emergency reserves, she ordered. No one dies because we counted the cost of medicine. The news of Dr. Walsh's decision spread through both fleets. Human crew members volunteered to donate blood for enemy soldiers. The sight of humans giving their own life force to save alien lives became one of the most powerful images of the entire conflict. Lieutenant Commander Pete Rogers visited the quarters of his dead wingmen one final time. He had been asked to pack Charlie Davis's personal belongings for shipment home to his family. The task felt impossible. Pete found Charlie's journal on his desk, open to the last entry. The words were written in Charlie's familiar handwriting. If something happens to me, tell everyone that dying to save someone else is the only kind of death that means anything. Pete broke down as he read his friend's words. Charlie had known the risks when he protected that escape pod. He had chosen to sacrifice himself, because that was who humans were supposed to be. The memorial service for all the battle's casualties was held in space itself. Ships from both fleets formed a circle around the debris field where so many had died. Human and coalition vessels broadcast eulogies for the dead in dozens of languages. Father Nathan Brooks led the human portion of the service. His words were carried across the galaxy by news broadcasts, reaching billions of beings who had never seen humans show such emotion. We do not celebrate victory today, the chaplain said. We mourn the necessity that brought us to this place. We remember that every being who died had value beyond measure. We promise to carry their memory forward as we search for a better way. The galaxy watched in amazement as human soldiers removed their helmets and bowed their heads in respect for alien dead. These were the same warriors who had been called savage killers just days before. Admiral Crexthal made his own announcement to the coalition fleet. I have seen the true face of humanity, he declared. They are not the monsters we believed them to be. They are warriors who understand the cost of war better than any of us. The Admiral's words carried weight throughout coalition space. If Crexthal, one of their most respected military leaders, believed humans could be trusted, then perhaps the galaxy had been wrong about Earth's children. Private Jenny Martinez became famous across known space when recordings of her comforting dying enemy soldiers were broadcast on every news network. The image of a human woman holding an alien's hand as he died became a symbol of humanity's capacity for compassion. Jenny herself was embarrassed by the attention. I just didn't want him to be alone, she told reporters. Nobody should have to die alone. The Coalition Council met in emergency session to discuss Crexthal-S report. For the first time in galactic history, they had encountered a species that combined military effectiveness with genuine empathy for their enemies. Elder Isethka addressed the assembly. Perhaps we have been asking the wrong questions about humanity. Instead of asking why they fight so well, we should ask why they grieve so deeply. The answer to that question would reshape galactic civilization. Humans grieved because they understood that every intelligent being was irreplaceable. Every death in war was a loss for the entire galaxy, not just for one side or the other. Captain Morrison received authorization from Earth Command to begin formal peace negotiations with Admiral Crexthal. The talks would be difficult and complex. But both sides now believed they could find common ground. As the damaged fleets prepared to return to their home systems, Morrison stood once more on the observation deck. This time Admiral Crexthal joined him. The two commanders of several cities had been erased from existence. Millions of people had fought against